Friday with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. It's Ivy Nation Sports Talk in the Friday Rapid Fire Show. You guys got done a little bit earlier today. You and Ryan doing a little recruiting show this afternoon.
Yeah, man. We had a chance to talk to Logan Saldate, the new recruit in the 24 class, the new commitment, and which was an awesome talk. So anybody hasn't seen that interview yet, make sure you check that out. That was a lot of fun. And then we got into the mailbag, and we got done a little early, and I'm not upset about it. Got a chance to get an episode of Friday Night Lights in, so
nice.
Able to get that going. I'm not quite as far along, so I'm juggling a couple of different shows, but I'm right at the point where Saracen's dad is killed overseas.
Oh, okay. That's like what, season 4, 5, maybe something.
Yeah,
like that?
It's season 1 of the East Dillon Lions is where I'm at.
Second to the last season overall.
Yep.
Just got done obviously watching the whole thing all the way through.
I figured you were about there. So
yep.
Yeah,
Logan Saldate from Salinas, California. I'm gonna be out in that neck of the woods. That's about 20-30 miles from Monterey, where I'm gonna be next week as I head out on vacation. So I can wave at him, I guess.
There you go.
Driving by.
He's fast, so it'll have to be quick. He's a fast kid.
Yeah, that's right.
A little slot receiver action.
Yeah. Salinas produce area out there. A lot of produce.
He has 2 siblings that went to Michigan State, of all places.
Really?
Yeah. His brother was a wrestler, and I believe his sister's, a regular student, but both went to Michigan State. So
cool. Very cool.
A couple ties, I guess, to the Midwest.
Interesting pickup that they got with him. Obviously, with the Canyon decommit a while back, they needed another receiver for this class. Little different profile, like more of a slot type guy that they're getting out of him. I know that Brian's really high on him. So
yeah, I mean, I was surprised at the speed at which they replaced Canyon. I thought that they would kind of let senior year play out for some of these guys and see, who kind of popped their senior year, maybe jump on them, that kind of a thing. But they found this kid and they formed a quick relationship with him. And, based on the interview that we had this afternoon, it's a great interview. I mean, this kid's got a good head on his shoulders. It's a great interview. Like, he clearly showed them what they needed to see. And then from a personality standpoint and all of that, obviously showed them what they needed to see. And I was surprised, but I think he's going to be a very good fit. So
good deal.
It's good. I think it's really good.
Tommy Guns, keep your eye on the road. No distracted driving out there. He's in his truck just south of us, he says, on Highway 30.
Yep.
Going through Hamlet, down south of like the Walkerton area, kind of in that area.
It's in the Northwood
smaller towns
area.
Yeah. Yep. Drive safely. I saw that Hannah Hidalgo and Cass Prosper from the Notre Dame women's basketball team, they were in Madrid, Spain, playing in the U19 World Cup, and Niele Ivey, their head coach, is over there watching them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hidalgo's playing for the U.S. She had like 13 assists in their game earlier, and Kassan Prosper playing for Team Canada. Yeah, but Niele Ivey flew over there. She's got some picks with both of them over there in Spain.
Well, and I saw that all the games are available on YouTube Live.
Oh, so I didn't see that. I'll have to check that out.
I watched a little bit of Prosper in Canada. Watched a few minutes of that game. The announcer was god awful, so I did change it after a little while. But it was just your typical guy who's on like a YouTube Live, just kind of like talking to the people in like the comments and like.
Oh wow! So he's just kind of hanging out over there, huh?
Yeah, it was very strange. Like, and then he would kind of go into a little bit of play-by-play, and I don't know. It wasn't great, but saw her make a few plays, so that was kind of cool.
Nice, very nice. She'll be here, of course. They've been busy playing for their for their countries, and
No
the
doubt.
rest of the team here working out in the summer. I know that they were here for a little bit, but they'll be bouncing back overseas here not too long, going to Greece and Croatia. The women, Notre Dame women, doing that.
That's right.
Team tour over there in early August. So
okay,
they'll be heading back to Europe,
and that's preseason stuff, obviously. So there's no
foreign tour things. Play a handful of games and all that stuff.
So no play-by-play for Sean Stiers is what.
No, nothing like that. Not till Paris. Not till Paris.
Yeah. If you lead a rough life there, Stiers. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I know.
It's rough.
I didn't get to talk to you about Lane Kiffin yesterday. Did you see on any of the social media? Lane Kiffin did his media. I mean, he looked like he just rolled out of bed with that hair that he had yesterday.
Social media had a good time with that.
Yeah, they did. A reporter at the SEC Media Days, though, told Lane Kiffin that people say the reporter looks like Kiffin. Did you see any of that video?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so and of course it blew up, but Kiffin responded. He asked him, he's like, "Oh, what's your mom's name?" He kind of gave him a wink.
Wow.
He was on, man. He was on fire. And then, he also kind of sarcastically thanked Paul Feinbaum for starting off the whole, Nick Saban's legacy is dead kind of thing. And he's like, "Oh, thanks a lot, Feinbaum. Thanks for pissing him off. All you're doing is motivating him now. And, the rest of us going to have to pay the price now, that you're lighting a fire under Nick Saban." That's what everyone in the SEC really wants,
Yeah, exactly. That's the last thing he needs is more motivation to be the best coach of all time. Like, that's not necessary for everyone.
Well, Vince, let's just get into this. We got a lot of topics to get to today. The all rapid fire. Here's my first one for you.
Okay.
Did Marcus Freeman use up his free passes with his losses to Marshall and Stanford last year, or does he still have leeway this season?
He used up his free passes for those kinds of losses, right? Like, he can still lose games and it's okay.
Right.
But he can't lose to Central Michigan, and he can't lose to, insert team here that you are an absolute heavy favorite against. He can't lose those games. Like, that's not where this program is. That's not where this team is. This isn't the program that Brian Kelly took over, where that it's going to be a rebuild and, there's going to be some losses along the way and, things of that nature. He shouldn't have lost those last year, obviously. So those were his free passes. And I would say even more so, like, you can almost explain away the Marshall loss, like almost, but not the Stanford loss. Like, that one you can't explain away in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So he can't have more games like that. Even if he let's say he goes 3-0 in those big games, but then loses to Central Michigan, people are going to be like, what are we looking at here? Like, who is this guy? And, what kind of program is this? Like, they can beat the big boys, but they can't beat the crappy teams that they should walk through,
Right. And, I'm well aware, this has been brought up before. Brian Kelly had obviously shortcomings in his first couple of seasons with the losses to Tulsa and Navy and USF and those kind of teams.
Sure.
But, Kelly inherited a team that had gone 16-21 the three previous seasons before he took over. There were problems. Whereas, you go to where Freeman is right now, he inherited a program that had 5 straight double-digit win seasons, and they were 32-6 the 3 seasons before he took over. So, night and day difference, the differences in the programs that those guys took over. So even though growing pains, yes, you expect some growing pains, especially for a rookie head coach at a place like Notre Dame with, all the expectations in the spotlight and everything that comes with it. But, that's why I'm asking the question, though, because it's one thing to lose, to Ohio State and USC in 1 year. But, even though like Kelly had beaten USC 4 straight times prior to that, but there's still
it's a different USC, though. I mean,
exactly.
I'm not saying that Kelly wins that USC game either. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, what if you beat USC and Ohio State and Clemson? What if you run the table there And then, like you brought up Central Michigans and stuff like that. What about Duke or Pittsburgh? Then like you run the table against the one, those big boys, but then all of a sudden, inexplicably, you drop one of those kind of games. It makes it a lot harder to stomach now in year two, especially when you get the kind of quarterback that you've got and you've brought the expectations back up. That's why I'm wondering, like, how far does that glow kind of take Marcus Freeman? Is all the glow gone now if you start dropping a couple of those games again?
So there are certain teams and games and things like that I think they're never okay. All right. I want to make sure I clear that up. Like, it's never okay. But like, let's say they beat Ohio State and then they go on the road and they lose to Duke. Okay, like, that's not Stanford. That's not Marshall. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of explain that one away because Duke is supposed to be pretty decent this year. Those kinds of things. You can't lose to Stanford again. You know what I mean? You can't lose to Wake Forest, even though that's the game after Clemson. You can't lose to Wake Forest. I'm sorry. There's a bye in there as well after Clemson. Like, you can't lose to Wake Forest. Like that, like Wake Forest, Central Michigan, like those are the Stanford, Marshall. Like, you can't lose to those teams anymore. Like, there's certain teams you can explain away. There's certain teams you can't. Right? I mean,
at some point the winning streak against the ACC teams is going to end, but it's a question of what kind of team will it, like, will it be a Clemson? Will it be a ranked, NC State or Duke, assuming, like those kind of like ranked teams, I think, even though they would still be disappointing if they're not one of the big dogs to an extent, again, like, you can explain them, I guess.
Right.
But it's those other ones that you're talking about. You can't do it.
No, you can't explain those away anymore.
No, I agree. So my next question, if Tyler Buchner doesn't win the starting job at Alabama, do you buy or sell that him leaving Notre Dame is better off for the Fighting Irish in the long term?
I sell that one big time. Absolute sell. Tyler Buchner leaving Notre Dame, no matter what he does at Alabama, is not good for Notre Dame. Because, in my opinion, he's the preemptive starter going into 24, even though, so like, nothing really changes in 23 except for the fact if Sam Hartman goes down, I have more confidence that Tyler Buchner is going to go out and be able to continue this, continue to be able to win games, essentially, right? If Sam Hartman goes down now and it's either Steve Angeli or it's Kenny Minchie, there's going to be a drop-off in production pretty massively. Even if those guys are hitting their true freshman or true sophomore, ceilings, there's still going to be a drop-off, right? So no matter what happens with Tyler Buchner at Alabama, him leaving Notre Dame hurts Notre Dame, especially going into next year. Absolutely.
Does it really hurt him, though, going into next year that much?
Absolutely. Yes.
How? Because he's got nominally more experience than the other guys on the roster. And, I mean, as we talked about on yesterday's show, this is a guy who threw an interception every 16 pass attempts, whereas Sam Hartman went more than twice as many pass attempts with that, to throw one interception. Like,
you can't compare him to Sam Hartman. I'm not doing that. I'm comparing him to who's on the roster next year.
I'm not comparing him to Sam. I'm just using that as to compare where they are. And again, like you were talking more about this year anyways. Like, my point is, as talented as Tyler Buchner is, he's got less experience, really less action. Now, college game time, he's got a little bit more playing time than the other guys. But when I say actual playing time, I'm going back to high school. These guys have actually played football. Like, he had to miss a season in high school due to injury. He had to miss a season in high school due to COVID. Minchie, Angeli, CJ Carr, at least they've been out there playing football. And that's my point with the interceptions is, on top of that, he's got less experience. As talented as he is, he's got less experience, and he's got an interception problem. He's got more interceptions than touchdown passes in his career. And he was recruited by Tommy Rees. He follows Tommy Rees to Alabama. He's played in Tommy Rees's system here. And so if he goes down there and he can't compete for with those two guys to win the job against two Alabama quarterbacks who had a horrible spring, how is Notre Dame better off with that guy here? If he can't succeed with all of that down there, how is Notre Dame better off for that, again, in the long term going forward? Because he barely has any more experience than any of the other three quarterbacks you mentioned.
He's a known quantity to me. I think he's got more talent than both of those guys at this stage in their career. And I would ride with Tyler Buchner all day long over Minchie and Angeli in 24. I would.
And we know that was the plan, but again, like
right. No, I get it.
Looking at it, if all that happens down there, then I just think, and the reason again that I was talking about the interceptions in comparison to Hartman, because yesterday the question that we asked was, how would we look at this season differently if Sam Hartman never came here and it was Tyler Buchner right now? Well, you're still talking about a quarterback, again, with less experience, and there's all this raw potential and upside, but that's still what it is. There's still a lot of things that they would have to work through with Tyler Buchner. And that's kind of my point again. Next year, all you're doing is delaying it a year, and there's still a lot that you've got to work through next year to make, Tyler Buchner a fully functional, operational quarterback who can play at a championship level.
Sure. No, I get all that. I still take him over the guys that are on the roster right now going into 24. Absolutely 100% all day long, unless they show something just absolutely spectacular in a backup role this year. I am taking Buchner all day. And yeah, he is potential. But what are the other two guys that are on the roster? They're also potential, because no matter what happens, unless Sam Hartman goes down with a season-ending injury and one of those guys has to go in and play the rest of the year.
And they're not going to be right.
Okay.
Right.
Then Tyler Buchner still has more experience at the collegiate level than those two guys combined. And so I would still take Tyler Buchner over those two guys and let those guys and CJ Carr incubate one more year. And then it's just an all-out battle for who takes the starting spot in 25.
Right. Derek says he played a decent amount in 21-3 games last year.
I think he's talking about.
But the games that he played in 21 were package quarterback.
Right. That's completely different.
He wasn't even running the system. And that's different. To my point. He's actually, when you include high school games that the rest of these guys have played, he's actually the least experienced quarterback of all of them.
From a high school standpoint, yes.
Because at least they have game reps.
Sure.
Right. But again, how much difference does that actually make?
Oh, huge difference. High school is way different than college. Yeah, I do.
What he's done. Oh, okay. So throwing 8 interceptions gives him a big leg up on these other guys. Just because he's played in a couple games. You can
change what you do. You have the experience. Oh, well, I messed that up, and I can learn from it.
It didn't matter to Trevor Lawrence when he was going up against Kelly Bryant a few years back.
Well, he was a generational quarterback. I don't think we can put those two people.
But we're talking about experience.
I'm sorry.
Experience is experience, right?
I'm sorry. I'm not putting Tyler Buchner and Trevor Lawrence in the same sentence.
But
that's not
everyone wants CJ Carr to be a generational quarterback, right?
So, that's great, but he's not Trevor Lawrence. He's not.
Right.
He's not Trevor Lawrence. And so I am not putting the team on his shoulders as a true freshman.
I'm just saying, based on the experience that he's got and the production that he's got, he's a great athlete, great kid, all that different stuff. I just don't think that they would be that much better off with him compared to the other
I think
guys.
There's a big difference personally between him and the other two guys that are on the roster. So agree to disagree.
Agree to disagree. That's what we're
doing. Man. It's all good. I respect your opinion 100%. I see where you're coming from. But I see
where you're coming from too. But
yeah.
We've got.
You're over him. He left. You're over him. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Maybe that's it.
And here's the other thing. He's not coming back. There's people who are like, oh, would you take him back if he wanted to come? That ship has sailed. So that's not even something we even worry about.
See, and I don't disagree with Chi-Town completely. Yeah, he looked good in the Gator Bowl, but there were mistakes that he made as well. He still threw 3 interceptions, right? And that's part of my point. It's he's obviously a very talented quarterback, but again, new offensive coordinator, the whole thing. Maybe you're just better off, with this reset, especially, again, the OC who recruited him, followed him down there, playing in his system, the whole thing. Like, if he can't succeed with all those things working for him, again, maybe Notre Dame is just better off with their own guys, kind of a fresh reset with these guys that they've recruited, and go forward with that.
I would love to see Tyler Buchner in Jared Parker's offense, and what we think Jared Parker's offense is going to be. RPO heavy, you get a chance to get Tyler Buchner outside with his legs as well. Short passes, boom, boom, boom. I would have loved to see him in this offense as opposed to Tommy Rees's offense as well. Yeah. All things that will never happen, but I would have enjoyed seeing that.
Right. D Troll Hunter says Heather Dinich predicted him to win the job. She is the one of one then that is predicted it, because again, I watched SEC Media Days, with all the different Alabama insiders and other reporters down there. Everyone else down there is talking about the other two guys, Milroe or Simpson, basically. And it was, and I think it was what's his name, Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback himself, was saying he thinks that Buchner was basically brought in as an insurance policy.
Which I don't know how you can predict who's going to be the starting quarterback when the two guys that they had look like garbage in the spring game. Right. And the guy that's just come in, Tyler Buchner, they've never even seen him take a snap.
Well, and that's Alabama. The thing. It's like it's like summer workouts.
Right.
And,
what are we doing?
Obviously, the reporters have contacts and stuff like that, but it's still summer workouts.
Right.
There's still no one's. And Nick Saban closes most of his practices apparently anyway.
Exactly.
They see less than we do up here. So how you are able to kind of make some of those calls, I don't know.
They're all guessing is what they're doing. They're all guessing.
Really,
I'm not saying Tyler Buchner is going to be the starter. I personally think that was about the worst spot he could have possibly gone to in the transfer portal. There are places that Tyler Buchner could have gone and been super successful, been the starter, been working as the starter, and all of those different things. He did not pick well when he went into the transfer portal. He would have been better off staying at Notre Dame, being the backup, and then starting in 24. But I'm not in his camp, so it is what
Corey
it is.
says he thinks Tyler screwed himself when he transferred. If he doesn't win the starting job this year at Alabama, chances are he won't win it at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he bet on himself, but it could be a losing bet. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Indy cheat sheet. If Buchner stayed, he would have been a starter for 1 year in 24. I think it would have been more likely he stayed through 25. So 3 years of Buchner or one of Hartman, and then on to someone else. And that's a good point as well.
Well, it'd be 2 years of Buchner because
I mean, assuming now, again, we're assuming that he plays at a competent level next year, and people aren't calling for, again, this is if he were still around, plays at a competent level, not throwing a bunch of interceptions. People aren't calling for his, all that
of course
kind of stuff. And then we've got another, quarterback competition in the spring and that kind of thing. But doesn't matter now because
it doesn't, because he's not coming back. That ship has sailed.
That's right.
He chose Alabama for better or for worse. And I honestly think it's probably going to be for worse, but that's just my opinion. We'll see what happens. I want him to be successful down there. If I said this, was it yesterday? I don't know. I've done a bunch of shows. Somebody gave like the option of like, hey, how would you feel if like Tyler Buchner goes to Alabama, wins the Heisman, blah, 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 or, Kelly wins the national championship, or,
right.
I was like,
I think we talked about that on
you
Wednesday.
And me. Okay. Yeah. It's Alabama all the way. Like, I would love to see Tyler Buchner be successful. And I have no problem with Tommy Rees being successful, as long as they don't have to step on Notre Dame on the way there. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only caveat to that. I wouldn't want them to beat Notre Dame in order to be successful. But I have no way that I'm rooting for LSU in any way. So, yeah.
I concur. So if you could put on a Mission Impossible mask where you look and sound exactly like someone else. Have you seen these Mission Impossible?
No.
Like, have you ever seen that?
No. So you had to explain it in the question, which is helpful to me.
Okay, yeah. So like in Mission Impossible, like literally it's like, like a guy walks into the room, it's just, he's walking, talking, whatever. And then all of a sudden they rip off the mask and, it's Tom Cruise or whoever. I think Philip Seymour Hoffman, a few Mission Impossibles back. Apparently they actually have these things. There was something back when H.W. Bush was president. I saw this interview with someone who was like, they were either in the FBI or the CIA. They went to one of these, kind of awards things, where the president's handing out a medal or something like that. And one of these agents walked up and introduced themselves to the president wearing one of these masks. And the president had no idea that, it was like fake mask in the whole thing. But they do a lot of this in Mission Impossible where they look like they can, they generate this mask in this, magic briefcase thing and they put it on and then, like they're walking around, you think they're somewhere else. So the question is, if you could put on one of these Mission Impossible masks, you look and sound exactly like someone else, what Notre Dame football player or coach would you pick?
Coach is easy. It's Marcus Freeman. I mean, that's a no-brainer because of how popular he is and he's immediately recognizable. I mean, he's going to New York, throwing out the first pitch, going to the White House. Like, he literally has the skeleton key to whatever room he wants to get into, and that would be awesome. Okay? It would be awesome. If it was a player and I did not have a wife and an awesome family, it would be Sam Hartman, because guarantee you he's doing well for himself.
And I would just, like right now, Sam Hartman is the quarterback, whatever Notre Dame quarterback it happens to be, like Saturday night after a win at Notre Dame Stadium, that's who I would want to be. The Notre Dame quarterback, whatever he's doing and, wherever he happens to be going and whatever else, that would be the way to go. Right. And like, just to get to experience what that is like to be the Notre Dame, because obviously you hear, the head coach and the quarterback at any program, but especially at Notre Dame, too much praise, too much blame, all that kind of stuff. Like, to get to literally walk in their shoes for like 24 hours and have everyone think, that you're them. I think that would be pretty cool to be able to experience something like that.
It'd be awesome. Like, it would be immediately after like the Ohio State game. Like, as soon as the game's over, I meet him in the locker room. We each put the mask on. He gets to be me. I get to be him. And I get to enjoy the spoils of the Ohio State win at home for 24 hours. So Saturday, all the way Saturday night into Sunday morning, all day Sunday. Yep. Sign me up.
Right. So it's been more than a year and a half now at this point since Brian Kelly left Notre Dame for LSU. And he keeps getting the questions about comparisons between the two schools, Notre Dame and LSU. So which of these is more true? It's time for the questions to end, or it's time for Kelly to stop answering the questions?
Kelly needs to move on, because it feels to me like,
again, he's getting the questions.
Right. Be like, look, guys, I'm not the coach at Notre Dame anymore. Right? I'm the coach at a top 5 university. We're looking to win a national championship. I'm not talking about my ex-girlfriend. I'm talking about my wife. You know what I mean? Like, stop asking me questions about my past and let's talk about the future and let's talk about the present. So if I was him, that's what I would do. Now, reporters are going to ask whatever's going to get them clicks. And so anytime that you can somehow get Brian Kelly on the record saying something about Notre Dame, you're going to get clicks. I have no problem with them asking those questions. Kelly needs to shut it down. He needs to shut it down.
And that's what I think that as well. And that's what Tim was saying. Kelly just needs to let it go. The problem, though, because like I think that most of these questions come, like he was on Sirius XM radio earlier this week, and he was obviously at SEC Media Days, but it seems like it was the Sirius XM interview. Like, it's more national guys, it seems, because I don't think the LSU beat reporters, like care about any of the Notre Dame stuff anymore. That's like way distant memory. Maybe that was the first couple press conferences and, like when they're asking him, how does this compare to whatever,
Sure.
But I think it's more, again, like more the national guys right now, because they see him less and they're kind of taking a bigger picture view of the whole thing. And again, it's been a year and a half. So to some extent, I guess, if he hasn't been on that show or whatever, it's still relatively new. But like, again, like he's got a body of work already at LSU. I agree with what you're like. Between the two, he needs to shut it down. But the problem is, it's to his advantage to keep playing up all these benefits that as long as he is still doing well at LSU, it's to his advantage to keep playing up all these great benefits that he now has at LSU compared to when he was at Notre Dame. So he's not going to do that because the ego sits right here on his shoulder, and he's not going to let that go as long as it plays to his advantage. But that's really what he needs to do, is just shut it down.
It keeps his name in the Twitter sphere and all of that for sure. And he's all about himself, so that doesn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, that's exactly right. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Pac-12 Commissioner George Kliavkoff said today that his conference is the strongest it's been in 2 decades.
He is. Hold on, let me look at this for a second. I want to make sure I answer this correctly. Is it a buy or a sell, or is it? Fill in the blank.
No, this is fill in the blank.
It is absolutely true. Is my blank. He's absolutely 100% true that it is the strongest that it's been in 2 decades. The problem is that it will return to weak status next year when USC and UCLA leave.
Right.
But right now,
technically,
they're really strong. There's no doubt about it. For this year, they're in great shape. But then they have to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit after this year.
And it's like the Stuart Smalley. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like that. It's just,
right.
Like keep looking in the mirror and telling yourself that. But you're right. Like the rise of USC coming back actually made them, pretty darn good right now. But the whole thing, like he also got up there at the podium and said, well, we're not going to announce a TV contract because I want this to be about football. And so then there was a reporter in the audience who kept pressing him on that, saying, well, you saying that you're only not going to announce the TV contract because you want to talk football implies that you have a TV contract that you could be announcing, but you're not announcing it because you want this to be about football. And then, of course, Kliavkoff wouldn't respond to that, wouldn't give him a direct answer to that because he knows he doesn't have a TV contract.
Yeah.
And that's, like, he's yanked San Diego State around, like they're kind of getting dragged out in the wind on this whole thing because they obviously were planning on leaving the Mountain West, and they sent the letter to the Mountain West. And now they can't leave the Mountain West because they don't even know if they're going to end up being invited, because apparently, like if the TV contract isn't good enough, the teams that are currently in the conference, they don't want a couple extra teams. They don't want San Diego State and SMU because they want to keep the money themselves. Yeah, they're like whatever pool is there. They don't want 2 more mouths to feed in this whole deal. So, yeah, I mean, you make a good point. Like for right now, where it actually is right now, after the season that USC had last year and winning another Heisman Trophy and all that, the Pac-12 is in pretty good shape. But
yeah,
the fact that they won't even announce a TV contract because there's no TV contract to announce, because it's like that. I think it's all going to fall apart here. I think it's all going to unravel.
Oh, I agree.
Soon
it is going to unravel, and it's going to be ugly. But right now, the top half of the Pac-12 is just as good as a lot of other conferences, to be honest with you. And they're going to be competitive. The problem is they're going to knock each other out, and I don't think that they're going to be a national championship contender in there because there's going to be some carnage. But there's going to be some good games in the Pac-12 this year. Like they are very strong right now. And if they were able to keep that intact, they would have a TV contract right now. The loss of USC and UCLA absolutely killed them. Them.
Yeah, I mean, there's not very many people that want to watch Pac-12 football right now. This season, like you said, I mean, it's going to be like a swan song. You could see some of the best football you've seen in that conference in a long time, but next season rolls around, it's going to be a snooze fest. Nobody's going to care.
Yep.
The sale of the Washington Commanders is official, Vince, and there's a report that apparently new ownership is thinking about changing the name of the team. Do you buy or sell? They should change the name.
I buy it because I wasn't a fan of the Commanders in the first place. Like the name, stupid. Right. Like I know it never. It falls really in the same category as the Guardians. To be honest with you, like they're both terrible. Like they had so many other good options. It felt like,
and you end up going with something really generic instead.
Yeah, just really poor choices by both franchises, frankly. And so now it's kind of a situation: is the grass greener on the other side? They could very well choose another terrible name that's worse than the Commanders. Like that's always a possibility. But to be honest with you, Sean, I kind of liked the Washington football team. I had no problem with that whatsoever. And I think they had a decent little brand thing going, and then they changed it to the Commanders. So I buy it, but they need to just do a better job of the picking process because it could get worse. I mean, it's definitely possible, but I buy
it. I'll get back to this one here in just a second. Let me start this one. Yeah, they're not going back to Redskins and Indians, guys. Sorry, that's not going to happen.
They're not, which is, I mean, they're
not. The Washington football team, especially like this whole Commanders thing and the branding. You know, the uniforms they've switched to. That like none of it. Yeah. Like the colors are obviously the same, but none of it is a good look. I think. It's going to be, I think what's going to be interesting is apparently because there was so much dislike of Daniel Snyder, there were people who bought up a lot of the trademarks to other potential names.
Interesting.
To keep him from being able to switch to. So I will be curious to see like if maybe some of those trademark holders and, owners are more willing to work with this new group. Magic Johnson, by the way, is part of the new ownership group. So,
okay.
That's going to be, I wonder if they hold a contest. That's what they need to do. If they really want to, kind of get the locals involved in the whole thing, hold a contest, figure it out. Fan base voted for Red Tails is what Chi-Town said. And that was, had something to do with like the, I think it was like World War II era, like the fighter planes or something like that. Yeah.
Which would be a weird one to get used to, but at least it comes from a place that makes sense. You know what I mean? At least it comes from something like the Commanders. Like what is that? I don't.
Yeah.
It's bad. I'm sorry.
Derek asked, we were talking about the Mission Impossible mask. He said, "Is this the big setup? Is someone wearing a Vince mask? Who is this guy?" Now that would be funny if I sat here and I actually pulled off my mask and, AI, who knows these days?
I know, right?
Is it really us even doing this show? Is
a hologram?
Is this all just computer generated?
That's right.
Yeah. So Nick Saban and his wife recently went on a trip to Italy. That was a 50th anniversary gift to them. My question to you, do you have any friends or family who would gift you a trip like that, a trip to Italy?
Maybe my in-laws. Maybe. But probably not. So I think the answer is no. And it's disappointing that I don't have anybody in my life that would do that. I don't hang around with enough rich people, man. There's just no way.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
We both have an anniversary coming up. I've got a milestone, 30 years coming up this year. And it's like, no one's contacted me about, sending us on some big anniversary trip. So
yeah, the wife and I were thinking about doing something, and it's like, it's just, do we really want to spend that kind of money? That's really what it comes down to. Maybe next year for the big 2-0 for us, but the big 1-9, it's not happening.
Yeah. I've got nothing. Like I've racked my brain, and that's like Nick Saban. He's sitting on piles of money anyway, and someone gives him a gift. It's a cool gift, obviously, but a trip to Italy. And apparently their anniversary was actually like 2 years ago, but she just got him to go this year, like this summer. They just finally went on this trip to Italy. And then I guess, they get over there and, they're in Italy and he's walking around and he's saying he's hearing Roll Tide. From all these Italians, they all speak Italian, but they're all Roll Tideness.
So is he walking around with like his Alabama big straw hat? Like, is he
that's what
advertising?
I was wondering. It's like, okay, so are you wearing the Alabama logo everywhere? Since
right,
coaches typically that's what they wear is like things that are given to them.
But seriously, that would be funny if that was the case. But isn't that how it always goes? Like the rich people are the ones that get like the free trips and
right,
the swag and like all this stuff, while us poor working sap, we don't get anything for free. Like that's not how it works.
Yeah, Father David says his aunt's wife is in Denmark and wants the family to come over and would likely cover it. Well, that's a very nice little.
You need to step it up, my friend.
Yeah,
like that needs to happen.
Jump on that. All right. Well, I guess that's going to do it for this show. Unless you have anything that you want to throw out.
I don't. I didn't realize we were already done. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
That was the end of the topics list, and I threw a few more topics on than usual today. So, all right. Well, I'm going to be out next week. Vince, I don't know. I have no idea.
I was going to say, don't pin us down, my friend. Don't pin us down. The only thing I know for sure, we got a show tomorrow at 1:00. We're going to break down the tight end group.
Okay.
Because we ran out of days and camp is starting. And so we're going to do a show tomorrow at 1:00. So make sure you guys tune in, hit that notification bell so you know. And then they're 50-50 on whether they're going to do a show on Sunday, a commitment show. So, got to hit that notification bell, folks.
Oh, you know what? I've got one more topic. I forgot. I scrolled down a little bit farther. I forgot this last topic. Now, this is, it's not like a big topic, but it's a topic. Like Derek is saying, 40 minutes, all you're giving me is like I actually had more topics on today's list than usual. It's just that we kind of blew past them quicker than I thought. Jesse also ended up getting caught up in work today, so this was supposed to be a 3-man show. Okay, final topic for today. Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen says the Big Mac is the best fast food burger. Do you buy or sell that?
Probably. I think it's the most unique, number one, because you can't bring in like sit down places. We're talking fast food here, right? And I think the Big Mac is the most unique fast food burger because really, what are you comparing it to? Like you've got the Big Mac, you got the Whopper. You can't really pick anything like a bacon cheeseburger. Those are too generic. It has to be something, whatever, right? And we don't have a lot of other chains around here, so I'm going to go with the Big Mac. I'm going to have to agree with him. I love the Big Mac sauce, the special sauce. Oh, yeah. I'm a big fan of that. Yeah.
I remember back in the 80s, you were still a young tot at this point when, the 84 Los Angeles Olympics, when McDonald's was having the scratch-off thing. Like if the U.S. won a gold medal, you won a Big Mac. If they won a silver, you got a fries. If they won a bronze, you got a Coke, I think. Something like that. And that was the first time, and the U.S. was just racking up the gold medals. And, so you get the scratch. And that was the first time I had ever tried a Big Mac at that point because they were giving them away for free. And I'll say, not bad. Not bad. I was much more partial to the Quarter Pounder with cheese between the two than the Big Mac. But I would have to put a Five Guys burger well ahead of anything that McDonald's has. And someone was saying,
Five Guys fast food?
Yeah, Five Guys is
Do they have a drive-through?
Well, you don't have to have a drive-through to be fast food.
I don't know. I feel like you got to have a drive-through to be fast food.
What?
Yep. I'm putting that out. From? That's a caveat.
Well, if that's the case, then I'll take a somebody else said Culver's burger. I would take a Culver's burger.
That's fair. That's fair. I would, if you gave me the option, I'm taking a Culver's mushroom and Swiss burger over anything any place else has. That is pretty much.
See, and I've never had a Portillo's burger. Have you? I've heard their burgers are pretty good.
They're okay. They're not bad.
They've got enough the Italian beef and the hot dogs are actually, they're more unique. So it's like I've never tried a burger at Portillo's.
The burger is good. It's more closer to like a burger you would get at like a TGI Fridays or something along those lines. So it's a little bit more of a gourmet burger, but you're paying for it too. You're paying the money for it.
Back in the day, and this is actually the first time I had one of these, is where I'm going this weekend to Monterey. Carl's Jr. is out west on the West Coast, and they've kind of migrated. Like they've combined forces with Hardee's. So you have the Carl's Jr.'s, Hardee's, but they have the Western Bacon Cheeseburger, and it's like like your burger, and it's pretty good size, and it's got onion rings and some barbecue sauce on it. It's kind of like, I think some people, like other people would call it a cowboy burger or something like that.
Yep.
That was a very good burger back in the day.
I love me some onion rings. There's no doubt about that. I would. This is going to anger some people, and that's fine. Barbecue sauce is not my thing. Like that would be
interesting.
Behold the barbecue sauce.
Interesting. Tyler says In-N-Out is trash, by the way. I've tried it so many times to like it, and it's terrible. I'll tell you what, Tyler, I've had it the last couple times I've been where In-N-Out is, and I have not been impressed as well. There was one time, it's been many, like at least 15 years ago. First time I had them, whole different story. What's the place? Whataburger in Texas.
I've heard of that one.
Whataburger. I would give Whataburger the nod, I think, over the In-N-Out
What about
burger.
White Castle?
I don't think I've ever had a White Castle.
Really?
Yeah.
White Castles are pretty good. I don't know that I would want them all the time. You know what I mean? Like it clears you out from what I can gather. But and they're really small, and so I never know how many to get. That's the other problem.
We had a place, and it's still there in my hometown, Salina, Kansas. It's called Cozy Inn, and it's like one of these. It's like it's not really a restaurant. It's like basically like a grill and like kind of a diner counter, very small diner counter, but they sell them they're basically like the White Castle size, like the little things, and Cozy. It's basically burger bun and some onions and pickles and that kind of thing. But you walk in there, you walk out, you smell like a big onion.
I bet
when you walk out. So.
What about Redemax? I know that's a local.
Oh, Redemax, that's a good one too.
But that's not fast food. That wouldn't be considered.
Well,
fast
by your
food.
Definition. Your definition.
By my definition.
I mean, it's sit down, but like the kind of food I still think it's fast food. All right, so we got a couple questions sliding in under the radar. Number one, ND fan. Scale of 1 to 10 confidence that an 11-1 Notre Dame team makes the playoffs.
9. I mean, I feel pretty darn good about that. Now, I would need to know what that one is. Like, which one did they lose? When did they lose it? That kind of like, did they lose to Ohio State in Game 5 and then ran the table and beat Clemson and USC and, really had that momentum? How many undefeated teams are there? But I feel pretty darn good with the strength of schedule that Notre Dame is going to end up having at the end of the year. If they only have one loss, they got to be one of the top 4 teams in the country.
Yeah, like did they beat Ohio State and USC but then lose in November to Clemson? Or did they do what we were talking about? Like, do they run the table with the big 3, but then inexplicably lose some other game, like a Boston College type situation that screws up their whole season?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, but I still feel like even if they lose a late one, right? So if they're undefeated going into, let's see here, I want to get the schedule in front of me. If they're undefeated, like going into Wake or Stanford, I can't believe they would lose to Stanford again. Yeah. But if they, that kind of a thing, I still feel like they're not going to fall far enough to be out, but you want that loss to be early. If there's going to be a loss, you want it to be early. So like NC State on the road, one of those kinds of things, you know what I mean? Like that's what I would prefer, but I still think regardless, an 11-1 team has a pretty darn good shot at getting in.
Yeah, I'd give it a 9 as well. I guess I didn't put a number to mine, but I'd give it a 9 as well because there are still going to be some other, like how many other teams are 11-1, like all that kind of stuff. Number one fan, if we go 3 for 3 against the big 3, that could put us over 3 conference champs. It's very true. But again, it also depends on who your loss is to and when you lost to them.
But I mean that would strengthen Notre Dame's argument if you beat the Big Ten champion, the ACC champion, and the Pac-12 champion. If they're all champions of their league, then they're also in the conversation for one of those spots. and that puts Notre Dame over all three of them because they beat all three of them, right?
Right.
And so now you're just talking about the SEC champ and maybe the Big 12 champ if they also happen to be undefeated or 11-1. Notre Dame's in, right? So
Tyler says he would take beating the Big Three but losing to Duke or NC State. See, like, what good does that do? Like, if you end up playing in just a New Year's Six bowl and not the playoff, like, what good does that do you? You know?
If they beat the Big Three but only lose to Duke or they only lose to NC State, they're in the playoff. Yeah. I firmly believe, because NC State's game 3. Like,
I think Duke is being vastly overvalued. I'm not saying they're not good, but I think they're being vastly overvalued based on the season that they had. One season that they had last year.
Right.
Like, it's not.
They got a good quarterback. They got a good coach, but they turned it around. Can they sustain that? I still think that's a big question. I mean, I'm a big Mike Elko fan. Don't get me wrong, but can you sustain success at Duke? That's a big question.
I agree. DJ's throwing you some money. He says it's for you to buy something better than a Big Mac.
I'll take it. I'm literally Sean. I am literally by myself for the night because my entire family, and if people remember the breakdown of my family, with 3 daughters, 2 sons, my son has a girlfriend, and my wife's mother, they're all at the movies going to see Barbie.
Oh,
so okay. Like, all the women in my life, plus
Barbie,
my 2 sons,
plus your sons.
But my son is going with his girlfriend, so I mean, like, I get it, and my other son's 8, so it's just me, baby. So I'll take that $10 and I'm gonna get myself some food.
There you go. Get some pizza rolls or something.
A little peace and quiet, frankly. That's kind of nice.
Indy Cheat Sheet wants to know who team captains. I mean, I think Bertrand is an easy one.
Yes.
Kaiser potentially. Like, I don't know how many they're going to end up naming. I'm just thinking of like who it could be, from the defensive side of the ball first. Hartman and
Cam Hart could potentially be one, depending on, like, if they go 2 on defense, 2 on offense, right? Like, Cam Hart could be one. Joe Alt definitely, because he's such a good player. A lot of times they want to make sure that the good players have an opportunity to be captain, and if anybody thinks he's going to be here next year, they're crazy. So this would be his opportunity to be a captain for sure. Do you think Sam Hartman has a chance to be captain? What's your opinion on that?
Okay. I think he does. Like, I mean, he is the quarterback, and it sounds like, he's really all in on this team. I think you could kind of write it off because of the fact that, he's kind of a free agent and all that stuff. He's only here for 1 year, but especially when you look at the makeup, of the offense, again, he's the quarterback.
Yeah.
He's very veteran. There aren't, it's a fairly young offense across the board when you look at things. So I think that, he could very easily find himself being a captain in his 1 year at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I could too. No, I definitely think I think he is a good leader. I mean, they're taking him to all these press junkets and all these different things. I mean, they wouldn't do that if he was just the quarterback. You know what I mean? So I think there's definitely a possibility. I could see Audric as a potential captain.
I was thinking about him.
I think a lot of people probably assume this is his last year as well. So I could see him being a captain. Some good choices, though.
When you think about who they took, out there to New York, could it be like could a second offensive lineman be in there? Like, could it be Blake Fisher?
Sure. Or really could it be Zeke Correll? I mean, he's a 3-year starter on the offensive line, right?
Right. Indy Addict 1, can we call Notre Dame a complete team yet? Are they still a little slacking on the D-line, linebacker, and safety?
You can't call them a complete team yet. It's still the preseason. And where are our question marks for this team? Like, I don't know that I have a whole lot of questions about D-line, if I'm being honest. I think the D-line is going to be just fine. Linebacker, there are question marks more from a rotation standpoint than from a production standpoint. And then I would say at safety, the second safety, we just don't know who's going to be in that spot. And so that is definitely a question mark for sure. Yeah, but it's not a complete team. It could be. If those questions get answered in a positive way, they definitely could be.
Yeah, I mean, you still have relatively young, inexperienced receivers, on top of what you're talking about on the defensive side. Like, The linebackers, again, I realize that there is room for improvement, but as far as the defensive coordinator, I think sees things. I mean, like, I'm going to be really curious to see, like, do we see more of Jack Kaiser and less of Maris Leofau, depending on how they line up.
Right.
Like if that nickel is out there on the field more often and you don't see the rover as much.
Or Jalen Sneed. Like, does he step up
Sneed
and
as
take
well.
a spot? You know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of I don't knows about some of these positions. And again, if they get answered positively, then this team will be just fine, if not really good.
Yep. Father David says, taking Hartman on the press tour is very smart. Great NIL pitch, exposure, and can build a Heisman campaign. Completely.
That's how you started.
Completely agree with that. It was a great start for him. And, he was able to, like, he was on Sports Center and did some of the other stuff and out there answering questions. And, like, I think that, just like the NIL, but also, like, for potential other guys who are sitting out there and thinking about maybe transferring to Notre Dame in the future to see a guy like him out there to have those opportunities. Yep.
Yeah, this could be you. And, they took their 3 best offensive players, 4 best, really, because they took Fisher, they took Alt, they took Estime, they took Hartman, right? That's some pretty good talent there.
Cryan says, scale of 1 to 10, how annoyed will you be if we have to have conversations about the O-line needing time to gel after the Navy game? LOL. We talk OSU, but we can't take any opponent for granted.
You can't take any opponent for granted. I agree. But there are certain opponents that I will take for granted. Tennessee State would be one of them. You can take them for granted to a degree. To a degree. I'm not saying you start all your subs and, whatever. But you're not going to know very much about this team after Navy. You're just not on both sides of the ball. You're not going to know that much about this team. And so there's still going to be a lot of question marks after August 26th. And if anybody thinks they're going to have all those questions answered, they're crazy. It's just, and then the same thing after Tennessee State. Like, we're not going to know a whole lot about this team. There's going to be some stuff we know, but there's still going to be an awful lot of question marks going into the NC State game.
Completely agree. But I mean, like, would I be annoyed if we have to have that conversation about the line gelling? Sure. But I also don't think it's going to happen. You've got to replace the 2 interior guys. Like, Schroff didn't look like a guy who was going to have any problems during the spring. Kristofic looked pretty solid during the spring, still, maybe a little bit, more work for him to do. But overall, I think it's going to be a pretty good offensive line. So, like if we have to have any of those conversations, I think that's going to be a huge red flag because the offensive line is one of the things that I think we're all counting on, like not having to have those kind of conversations about this year.
Yeah, absolutely. If they have a start to the season like they had last year, that's going to be a problem for sure. Because the offensive line was terrible in the first 2 games. They were terrible. And, part of that was because Patterson was out game 1 and then, he came back and didn't play real great. He probably needed to sit out another week, to be honest. There was a lot of problems with that O-line the first 2 weeks and then they started to gel and all of that. But I just don't see that being the case with this particular group as long as there's no injuries.
Tim B, do you guys think last year's defense is underrated by Notre Dame fans? And I'll just start by saying yes, because again, it was not nearly as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. Start with this. They ranked number 22 in the nation in total defense last year. They ranked number 37 in the nation in rush defense. And those are 2 of the top indicators of how quality your team, like they're indicators of teams that are trending toward being in the college football playoff, that kind of thing. Their biggest issue with now, again, we talk about third down, we talk about red zone. Were there issues there? Yes. But Ohio State, like Notre Dame ranked at the bottom of the country, obviously, in red zone defense. But Ohio State, which made the college football playoff, was not that much better. they ranked 126th in the nation in red zone defense last year, and they still made the college. So, like, is that an issue? Yeah, but it is also like you can still be a really good team and not be great in red zone defense. You can be a great red zone team and not be, a great team overall. They've got to get better. They've got to hold more teams out of the end zone. We know that. They've got to do better on third down. We know that. But those two things aren't necessarily indicators of an elite defense. They were not an elite defense, but they were closer to being a very good defense than I think a lot of people give them credit for. And it's predominantly because they just gave up some plays in bad situations. They just weren't consistent enough. Like they were pitching there around 75, 80%. If they can get up closer to 90%, then they're going to be a really good defense, I think, this year.
Yeah.
And I think they can be that because of all the experience. Didn't mean to cut you off, but I think they can be that because of the extra year in experience. Remember, this is the first second-year defensive coordinator they've had in a while.
Absolutely. And it's going to be a big difference from a scheme standpoint as far as understanding what they're supposed to be doing. And look, nobody's going to say that the red zone was good, because it wasn't. It was terrible. They were bad in the red zone. Right. They don't have to clean that up even that much to make themselves a really good defense, and that's all they have to do. If they focus on the red zone and they still do what they did between the 20s, they're going to be just fine defensively. And you look at it this way, they're going to score a lot more points this year. I'm very convinced of that. And that's only going to take pressure off of the defense. So, yeah, I do think last year's defense was underrated because of the timing of some of the things. Like, it felt like they would give up that big long drive at the end of a game when it was like, oh, it's a backbreaker, that
big run to, the big run to Marshall in the fourth quarter, the big, the third down against Marshall in the fourth quarter, when they could have put the game away with either one. They make stops on either one of those plays. It was just those back-breaking things where they couldn't get off the field. And quite honestly, I think that's, like when you look at the performance of Al Golden, and this was something that was talked about quite a bit last season. I think he kind of outthought himself in some situations and tried to get too cute in some situations instead of just letting his guys, kind of make some plays, that kind of thing. Indy Addict says, great answer on my question. I was referring to championship level potential with those positions. I think the receivers and current tight ends all have championship level potential.
I think there's championship level potential on the D-line. I think depending on how the linebackers step up and the rotation, they could easily be championship level. I don't know that the second safety is championship level. Now, they could play at a higher level, and if Xavier Watts takes the step that I think he can take, he can kind of bring that guy along with him, whoever that guy happens to be. But that guy's going to have to step up big time in order for that to happen.
Yeah, I concur. Yeah, I think that the receivers and the tight, especially the receivers, though, I'm as excited to see these receivers this season as I've been to see any group of Irish receivers in a long time. And the running backs you can throw in there, like the combinations. There's going to be so much talent on the field this year offensively.
I'm telling you, it's going to be like a pinball machine, man. Yeah. Just the bells, the whistles, like that's what the scoreboard's going to look like offensively for Notre Dame. I fully anticipate that being the case.
All right. Well, everyone was complaining. We were only about to go 40 minutes. We bought you 25 more minutes.
You're welcome.
There you go.
We're givers. We're givers.
That's right. Don't forget it. Speak well of us when you speak of us.
That's right.
All right. Well, hit the like button on your way out. You're welcome, Derek. Hit the like button on your way out. And, of course, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great week. I'll be back, in a week and a half or so after vacation, ready to talk some Notre Dame football and everyone else. It's going to be crunching time.
Yeah, it is. I'm excited. Right. Crunch time to school, crunch time to football season, crunch time to everything. Here we go.
5.1. Come on, Coach. Just for that, no Big Mac for you. All right. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later. IB Nation Sports Talk.